Welcome. This is Jack with one poem, courtesy of Lee County Podcast. Pete, would you please introduce our poem today?
Thank you, Jack. Today the poem that we have is titled Boy, for Dorson, dedication to it here. And it's by D.M. Aderibigbe, who is from Nigeria, Jack?
Yes.
Is that it? Yeah.
Yes.
And he and Jack are friends, and D.M. Aderibigbe has a book out, I know, from the University of Wisconsin, a book of poetry. I'm not sure. Do you know if this poem is in the book?
I don't think this particular poem is in the book. I'm not certain of that.
Okay.
But his recent book is called 82nd Street.
Oh, all right. Huh.
You can probably find it through Amazon or the actual press that it was published from.
Which would be, is that University of Wisconsin?
Yes, I think
too?
so.
Possibly. Okay. Well, yeah, the poem is titled Boy, and I have to make a reference to the, well, I'll tell you what, I'll save the reference for the end, but the dedication is really part of the poem, which I will go ahead and read. Never seen him in a school uniform. Instead, each day he wore clothes bearing time's hands, head buried among the greens at the back of my dorm. His tiny hands, married to a hoe, fell in rows like a relentless boxer. His mom, or so I thought, hurried him. Finish so you go fit shop, she said. It froze my mind to think eating is a form of miracle for an 8-year-old. I hurried to class. His tiny hands fell in rows. Now the footnote is this. Dorson, an 8-year-old Congolese boy, mined coal for the production of the iPhone. His story sparked outrage across the African continent in May 2017.
So, your initial thoughts on this poem?
That it's about child exploitation. It's about the de facto forced labor to get money for rich people, the exploitation of children, and this is what I think you had put it this way, Jack, the other day, as virtually free labor. Mm-hmm. When we see him, we begin by not seeing him, never seen him. The speaker begins with a negation. The glaring contrast in the poem is that the speaker is a student. That's his role, and the boy is not a student. That's the difference, and so much of what we have is an observation by the student and a commentary on the boy. Never seen him in a school uniform. Just start with never seen him, you know. Ironically, it begins with this negation. What the speaker doesn't see, he does not see a self. He sees a boy who isn't a student. You know, if you can put another negation to the first one, he is not in a school uniform. He is not a student. Kind of a double negation there. He wore clothes bearing times hands. A little bit of an explication here, I realize. We think of time as hands on a clock, but here it's the human hands that get the emphasis as he's bent over laboring, the boy. He wore clothes bearing time's hands. I realize we think of time as hands on a clock, but you hear it's the human hands that get the emphasis. Something in my notes there just went a little haywire, but we don't need to read from the notes. Certainly, they're just preparation for what we're doing right now. The hand. What are the hands doing? They're laboring. They are making money for other people, presumably for wealthy people, people involved in a corporation or corporations, married to a hoe. Giving the closeness of how much this labor is part of the boy's life. His hands rose and fell like a relentless boxer. Well, boxers have opponents, and maybe on one larger level here, the opponent for the speaker is a capitalistic system, if I can say that, without getting too political about it. But the opponent is the unseen person or people who are not in the poem, but the people for whom the boy is laboring. Like a relentless boxer. His mother must have been close by. His mom, or so I thought. Again, the speaker observing, hurried him, finish so you go fit shop. In Nigerian pidgin English, fit shop means being able to eat. So he's doing this so that he can eat. And then we get the startling comment here, the simile of sorts, eating is a form of miracle. It froze my mind to think eating is a form of miracle for an 8-year-old. Gee, I wasn't expecting that as a reader. The contrast between, again, the one observing and the one being observed. I hurried to class. And there again, with hurried, the element of time coming in again, and the young age of the boy, his tiny hands, and this continual labor. This is something he does every day, presumably. Rose and his hands fell and rose. So I think a little says a lot here, and in this case, I think the author's note does help some, but a very striking and powerful poem, reminiscent to some extent, similar but different to the poem that we did earlier by Robbie Nestor. North Korean women, workers in a Chinese factory.
Right.
That's not the exact title, but you
Right.
can look it up. So can I.
Well, one thing that I do find about that's really interesting to me in this poem is how it is structured in a way that it doesn't talk about what should be. For example, the boy who's in the back of the dorms chopping weeds. Essentially, he's out there, he's working presumably in a garden or he's working in a flower bed, but he's having to use a hoe to chop weeds. What's not said is that this 8-year-old boy should be in a school uniform. This 8-year-old boy should be headed off to class. And there again, what's not said is that we don't have an idea of who he is actually working for. Is he working for his mom or his guardian, working in the garden to produce food, or is he is his mother or a guardian being paid a wage to have this space cleared out of weeds? And the idea that, the miracle of an 8-year-old eating points to how thin society and culture can get when food scarcity is a driving factor in how people live their lives. We have food scarcity in the United States among lower economic groups, but that's also true worldwide. The economies of the world struggle, and poor folk struggle to eat. It's true in Nigeria, it's true in Kenya, it's true in Chad and Sudan, and all across Africa, Middle East, Asia. There's always going to be somebody whose labor is barely enough to get a bowl of rice. And a bowl of rice is what you get for a day. In Africa, you might have gare or gara, which is basically sort of a corn porridge. The idea of an 8-year-old having to hurry up to go eat, cut these weeds so that you can go eat, because you may not get a chance to eat if you don't hurry up.
Good point.
You see, and that's what I find interesting is what is not said. That could, what I think most poets do is that they have an idea in their head and they gotta say, I gotta write about this, I gotta put this picture in, I gotta put this picture in, I gotta put this picture in, when you don't really need to because the picture is implied.
Yeah, and this poem seems very particular and very careful about its imagery and its commentary too. Very selective. It's only 12 lines, but he certainly makes every word count. Interestingly, the note, the author's note specifies an 8-year-old Congolese boy, whereas the poem does not give an age, really, and nor does it give a nationality even. But I think that the emphasis here, as you were saying, Jeff, certainly on the suggested, on what isn't in the poem, but also just this observation and commentary that he's giving us here, just of seeing this boy for a moment or two and being very careful in how the boy is described, and commenting, as in, it froze my mind to think of eating as a form of miracle. And also, even with we need to consider here certainly the mother. She's somewhere, well, she's in the poem, somewhere in the image, but it's not really given in any detail. His mom, or so I thought could have been his mother, hurried him. She's close by though, but it's ironic that for a poem in which time is so heavily emphasized. Oh wait, I stand corrected here. Everyone makes mistakes. Yeah, the age is specified in the poem. Sorry, toward the end, for eating is a form of miracle for an 8-year-old. But consider that statement and what it would be like had the speaker in the poem said, "It froze my mind to think eating is a form of miracle for a child, or for a young child, or for a young boy." He didn't say that. He said a form of miracle for an 8-year-old, which I find more hard-hitting. It makes more of an impact. We already know that the title is boy. 8-year-old is more specific than young child. I think it works better here. Young child might seem a little too precious.
It's generic. It's generic. When you say a young child or a young boy, it's too generic. When you, the specificity of the age puts a picture in your mind. Most everybody knows what an 8-year-old boy should look like. Small, not necessarily robust, possibly thin, fragile in many respects. You have an immediate picture. We know that this is not someone, fixing to explode out of puberty. All right. If you had specified a 12-year-old, you could think that this kid is about to just simply explode in growth and maturity, and the picture entirely changes the entire picture, because a 12-year-old working in the backyard isn't as impactful as the 8-year-old. When you look at a 12-year-old, well, this is someone who's going to move up on in life. This is somebody who's got something to grow into. When you're looking at an 8-year-old, you say, here's a kid, here's a child who is struggling. Here's a kid who's being put to work because there's no other option. But if you change that by 4 years, it changes from being somebody who has no other option to someone who's going to make something of himself. If you can't catch that progression, how we perceive people, how we perceive ages. Mm-hmm. The idea of an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old doing hard labor is, we view it as that being as exploitive. But if we take a different approach to it, if we look at predominantly in the 19th century and early American 20th century, well, farm kids always worked. Farm kids, my own mother told stories about having to get up when she's like 4 or 5 and go get eggs or go milk the cow or something like that. So in rural America at that time, young children had chores. Even as young as 3 years old, they would go out and gather the eggs, or they would milk the cow, or they would rake up the hay, or whatever they had to do, whatever mom and dad told them. But that's because it wasn't necessarily working for a corporation or a job to get money from. It was doing a chore to help the adults out so that the adults could go and do the behavior work of the day. And it was a familial thing, it was a communal thing, and everybody was working. Here, what we see in this poem is that level of exploitation that is no other option. No, but you give it 4 years, then that perspective change. We're going from a small child to a young man, because 12 years old in many cultures, when you get 12, you leave the culture of women and you move into the culture of men. So again, there's layers here that when you dig into it, you can get, it's complex. It's not simple. On the surface, it seems simple. On the surface, it seems like it's just a kid chopping weeds. But when you start digging into the poem itself, you see that his clothes are time worn. All right, Time's hands has bleached out his clothes, has put some tears and rents and holes into them. Okay, so you see this idea of this child having to do something that, he's having to work when he should actually be in a school uniform and in class. And that's the disparity, that's the exploitation, this is the struggle.
And I think it would be a very different poem if the speaker, the poet, through the speaker in the poem, gave an extensive comment about it, but he doesn't really have to.
No, he doesn't.
And again here, going back to that word that leaps out to me, miracle. If you think about the rest of the poem, where is the miracle? No miracle has come to save the boy, to take him out of these clothes that were worn from use by Time's hands and put him in a school uniform. Right. No miracle of philanthropy, certainly, here, but perhaps the miracle is simply the miracle of breath, of being alive, of having the strength to lift a hoe or to go to school, but eating is a form of miracle for an 8-year-old boy. That's a very particular statement.
Yes.
And in this context, very powerful. He's doing this labor so that he doesn't starve to death.
Right. And one of the things I just want to make a mention about the author.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, Dammy, his poetry, especially his earlier stuff that he wrote before he went into college, and during his MFA, he writes from a personal experience. A lot of what he wrote about, especially early on, is about his own family, his own personal experiences growing up in Nigeria. And a lot of this stuff he's witnessed with his own eyes. So, again, there is a difference between what you and I write here in the States. We have our own perceptions, and what we put down in our own poetry, we write about our own personal experiences in many respects. But there is a shift in worldview. What Dammy has witnessed, observed in his life, obviously impacts his writing, and obviously, but being from Nigeria, that perspective from that part of the world contrasts greatly with most American writers. I would argue, I would put up and say this person has seen things that you would never imagine to see walking around here in Lee County, or walking around on the streets of New York even.
Sure.
I mean, we have our own horror stories here, but in Nigeria it's a different story. In Chad it's a different story. In the Sudan it's a different story. Because, again, I said that things get thin with culture and society, and there's no real safety net. There is no real guarantee that you're going to eat tomorrow. No. You don't know what's going to happen. Especially in Nigeria, they're going through, cultural upheaval. There is real conflict among the various. You have Christian Islamic conflict in Nigeria. You have tribal conflicts in which tribal groups have their own militias, and they've staked out territory within the nation. And there's still this friction from colonialism. And all this, gets woven together, and Dammy's poetry sounds different from an American writer. If I would just postulate a generic American writer, his poetry is vastly different, and in many ways much more imaginative.
Yeah, he does write in English. This is not a translation.
Right.
Yeah. So, how did you and he meet?
He saw some of my poetry on Facebook. I saw some of his poetry on Facebook, and we struck up a conversation.
Oh, okay.
And that's basically how it happened.
Yeah.
And that was roughly about 2012.
Okay.
Somewhere 2011, 2012,
Yeah.
somewhere along in there.
A good while ago.
And then he made his journey, made his pilgrimage to the United States. He got accepted into Boston University's foreign exchange program, or foreign student program.
Mm-hmm.
And he got accepted into that and started working on his Master's of Fine Arts, and accomplished that. And I have to catch up with it, but I think he's finished up his doctorate.
Is he in Nigeria now?
No, he's in the United States. I'd have to look it up. I think it's in Mississippi. I think he's teaching at a school in Mississippi.
Okay. Yeah, we don't usually go off the page in this one poem YouTube series, but in this instance, it's we have the opportunity to do that. In that my co-host Jack Campbell and Demi Aderibigbe are friends, and once again, I would say about this poem, as I would about others, pardon the generalization, it's not only what is said but how it's said, but another unique poem. I've never seen one quite like this. Although it does have thematic similarities to the Robbie Nestor poem that we did, which is our viewers and listeners can also access on YouTube, right, Jack?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing about this particular poem, I think in a way, it forces you off of the page. You read this.
That's well said.
You read this, and then you have to go start looking stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I read it. I have to go start looking stuff up. I want to find out more about the Congolese boy who was, working in a mine.
Yeah.
So again, in a way, there's poems that you go through and you read, and it's all there on the page, and you can form your thoughts about it. And then there are other poems that make you want to go look things up and find out more about why the poem was written in the first place. So,
yeah, and what we get here, you wouldn't find in a newspaper article about the same topic or some. What am I trying to say? You know,
you don't see the humanity.
It's news, but different from news in a newspaper article. Yeah, you don't see the humanity.
You don't. Let me put it this way: you don't see the boy with the hoe behind the dorm chopping the weeds.
Yeah.
You'll hear the story about it, but you don't necessarily hear the aftermath. And you don't, again, the idea of hurry up, finish up this job so that we can go eat, so that you can eat.
Yeah.
Okay. We won't necessarily get that kind of picture, that personal, because once you get into the broader world and you get something written up in a newspaper or you get a TV broadcast, that face changes, and the real aspect of the imagination gets faded. I think when we hear about an 8-year-old working in a mine, our minds just sort of tune it out because we've heard so many similar stories. Our minds tune it out. But when we can picture a kid who is physically laboring with a hoe and things like that, we bring it back down to earth. We bring it back down to the personal. We bring it back down to the human. And it's blood and bone and mud and dirt. And it becomes more real to us.
Yes.
No, we can start to feel the sweat, if you will. You can imagine what it's like to be out in the sun, even though it may be shady, there might be a cool breeze, but you're still sweating. You're getting blisters on your hands. If you've done any sort of work with a hoe, you understand. You work long enough, you're going to get blisters. They're unavoidable.
Sure. And the hands, the synecdoche, the part for the whole, so significant in this poem. That's the part that's repeated. The tiny hands rose and fell, and first qualified with married to the hoe.
Right.
But a very good poem, and I'm glad we've had a chance to discuss it here, to present it. Jack, do you have any final words?
I would say that I would invite our viewers to check out Dammy's book, 82nd Street. You can look it up online. It's fairly out there. If you do check it out, I think you're going to find some wonderful writing.
And his last name is spelled Aderibigbe. That's
correct. And so, thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this poem. Go ahead and check it out online again. Everything that we do, you can find online. And y'all have a great day.